Welcome to another edition of the Lighting Guy Podcast, a podcast from avnation.tv. It's all about lighting, lighting technology, and the integration of all those wonderful things. I'm your host, JP Bedell, and today's guest is Aaron Meadows, lighting designer extraordinaire who works across medium in everything from cable news to sports TV to theater productions. He's all over the place, and he works across mediums, and that's what we're going to focus our conversation on tonight. Aaron, thanks so much for coming on the show.
Great to be here.
How are you, man?
I'm doing all right, enjoying 'tis the season to be jolly.
Exactly. One of the things I'm going to try to do going forward on the podcast is asking people what the last thing they worked on was. So what's the last project or lighting related thing you touched before coming to talk on the show?
The last project I worked on was the tree lighting ceremony, the ceremony part of the tree lighting for South Street Seaport.
Very cool.
And, it was great. It was very successful. A bit cold, a bit wet and rainy, but otherwise a great turnout. Everyone was happy. It looked beautiful. And, with all the good people that I got a chance to work with, it kept me warm.
Nice. It's a very kind thing to say. So one of the things that I think, when we were talking about this a little bit before we started the show, it feels to me that you can't specialize anymore, or it's getting more and more rare for lighting designers to specialize. I am only a theater guy, or I'm only a TV guy, or I'm only an events guy. I'm sure some people do, and they're successful, but it feels like more and more successful LDs are crossing over to multiple mediums, and your work and your career is certainly emblematic of that. What do you think your work mix is now? Are you all over the map, or are you what's your from what I can tell, you're doing a little bit of everything?
It's been all over the map, really. A week ago, I was doing an outdoor event. A couple days ago, I was just in another theater. And then I was also doing a site survey for architectural lighting for a church. So it's not really, unless you find your house, your home house, which would just be great, because there are the houses out there that you can do that. You really have to go be across the board with everything.
Sure.
Because people will just call you for many different things. I even have people calling me to say, well, what do you think about the lighting in my house? And it's not like we're going to put on a show there, even though, maybe we could, aim a couple track lights around and, have a puppet show. But people want to have a different aesthetic, and it covers all across the boards. And the funny thing is, my background, really, my roots are theater. And it's taking the concept. It all starts with a concept. And making a concept with your client. Or sometimes your client might not know what they want, and then they might just give you the reins and let you go with it. But it's all about having a concept. How do I want this to look? And that starts from the roots of theater, and then you can apply it across different mediums.
So let's dig into that a little bit. I think that for a lot of LDs, myself included, theater was our first love. It's where we fell in love with doing this stuff, and I think that there's no purer way to experience light and lighting design than in a theatrical space, because your eyes are what is going to experience it, right? Like versus television, where it's filtered through a lens, obviously, and shown on TV. How long did you do theater? Were you a theater guy through college? Were you a theater guy before that? Where did that start?
It started in the 7th grade.
There you go.
So, a friend of mine was working. He was older, and he was brought in from high school, but I still knew him, even when I was in 7th grade. And he came in to do lighting for the school play, and he said, "Hey, you want to help me out?" And I said, "Sure." And he's like, "Let's bring those 6x9s over there." And at first I was like, "What's a 6x9?" And then, I started to know the lingo, learn the equipment, and then I got invited to the cast party and got free pizza and soda. And man, I was like, hey, I could work for the rest of my life on pizza and soda. I was hooked. So I was bit by the theater bug in 7th grade. And then I went to Mamaroneck High School, and Mamaroneck had a program called PACE, Performing Arts Curriculum Experience. And the great thing about that is PACE had theater, they had dance, and they even had TV, which Mamaroneck High School had this thing called MHS Info. So I was able to learn more about design and also apply that to MHS Info where we did the TV part. So it's yeah, I've been in the realm for a while. After having a relative who's an attorney and a couple of parents who were attorneys, it's like I think I became the black sheep of the family. But I just had to go do my own calling, and it's just in some ways I'm thankful that I can only count on my hand the times that I have to put a suit on because the ties, it's just
It's not your thing, right?
no.
No. Yeah, I mean, I have a similar story. I mean, for me, it was high school, but, my high school, for as big as it was, didn't have a particularly well-equipped theater, and we had these old R40 strip lights over the stage, and we were doing a production of A Christmas Carol. And the director, who's a faculty member, wanted it to feel like when Scrooge has to go back in time. We wanted some kind of effect to make that happen. And so, for me, it was like at whatever it was, 15 or so, going out to the store and finding like some small fogger and figuring out how we could rock these R40 strip lights so that it looked like something was happening on stage, and that's where it starts for a lot of people. That's where it started for me.
Yeah.
So to you, do you approach theatrical projects differently than you approach, say, an event or a TV project? Or to you, it's like lighting is lighting, let me get into it and figure it out?
Well, with theater, of course, you have the script, and you read the script, and then you sort of have your own idea of how it looks from the script, and then you talk with the director, and if you have a close relationship with the director, it's just great to be able to bounce ideas off of each other. Usually in the corporate world or event world, sometimes it's the party planner that dictates the scene, the party planner that dictates the theme, and then you're the one that basically has to sort of help support that theme. So it depends on who the client is. Most of the time, corporate, it's kind of dictated. The party planner or whoever the event planners have an idea of what they want. Even though with South Street Seaport, which I just did, I was able to kind of have free reign with it, number one and number two, since, it was an outdoor event, kind of our tech sort of got rained out, so we were sort of creating looks and things of the day of.
Sure.
So they were pretty much like, what, just take it, just run with it. And, there are guidelines, like, for South Street Seaport, there's a stage. People are going to be on the stage. Make sure the stage is lit. And then the rest of it is just, icing on the cake. Put a little pretty snowflake over here and maybe a splash of color over there. So it's a little bit more looser. And then spanning will include the medium of dance. Dance, a lot of the time, the choreographer knows what they want in terms of the feel of how they choreograph their dance. And then they let you, take the reins of it. And then you create the feeling of what you're seeing from their dance and also from the music. So dance gives you the opportunity in a way to write your own script.
Yeah, I mean, I've said to anybody that'll listen that if I could get paid a living wage to do dance lighting every day, that's what I would do, because it's the most freedom you have and the most expressive you can be, I think, as a lighting designer.
I'm right there with you. It's the most, even without speaking, it's the most visceral, deepest way, I believe, of communicating. And the beauty of that is it also means different things to different people, but it touches everybody. So yeah, I'm right there with you.
I love it, and I haven't done it in a long time, and I miss it. So we know that there's a different sort of collaborative effect, right? So there's event people who've got maybe a general theme, and you're trying to enact that theme. You've got theatrical directors where there's a script and a direction that you're trying to fulfill. Dance is all about your relationship to the choreographer. But when it comes time to actually enact the design, so it goes from concept to production, are your approaches vastly different? Because I know for myself, in a theatrical production, a lot of the times it's about the venue, it's about what kind of gear you may already have that you're walking into, what your budget is to rent gear, which is usually pretty tight, at least in my experience with theatrical productions. Whereas with events, I found myself when I was doing events a lot, a lot of it was about contingency planning. It was like, yeah, this is the general scheme, but I know that the day of they're going to do stuff that they weren't even thinking about doing. So what's my back end? What's my backdoor plan? So I kind of approached them as different, entirely differently. That like I never like I wouldn't have 20% extra gear on a theatrical production because I knew what I was going to get into before tech started.
Yep.
Whereas on an event, totally different ball game. Do you find that you're in a similar position, or how do you approach that kind of moving it from concept to action?
I think it's very similar. I've done enough tent parties where, the client walks in, in 2 hours before the event and says, hey, after we've hung all our tent poles and everything, let's move the stage 90 degrees over there. Let's move it to the other side. So it's, with events, it's about contingency planning. With theater, I think in some ways, depending on what the schedule is, you get a little bit more luxury to pre-plan and then work with it and have it evolved and not have it so basically it's a mad dash. It's sometimes the phrase does come into play of we did it again, we fooled them again, but not really so much fooling as being able to take the challenges that are there, especially in the events world, and run with it. And even sometimes in the video world as well. I once did a commercial shoot where it was a great day of shooting, and then I get a call, at midnight from, the DP saying it got lost. The footage got lost. We got to shoot it again. So it's one of those. It's a lot of contingency planning, and as it was also described to me from a friend, it's having tricks in your pocket, or your tool bag. What tools do you have in your tool bag, and having enough of them to make sure that when they say, okay, we want light 180 degrees around over there, you can cover it.
Yeah, yeah, and so that's just the difference between what your client base is, right? Like what the planning process is going forward. Do you find? I found when I was doing event work, particularly, that the planning process is getting more and more truncated. I feel like 10 years ago, I was able to sort of really think through an event, have multiple meetings on it. Now I feel like unless the budget is real high, there's a couple of preliminary meetings, maybe a rendering or two, and then it's like you're at the venue and you're shooting for the stars. Are you sensing that, or is that just my own?
No, I believe in many ways that's how it is, because in this day and age, with all this social media that we have, smartphones that we have, it's easier for us to communicate directly, but then again, I also look at it and think it's actually hard. I really miss the days of sitting down at a production table, seeing someone sketch, and actually talking it out with them. Today, I'm going to email you my PDF. Here's what the budget is. We need an equipment list tomorrow. And there's, I did a theatrical show about a month ago, and we sat down, had a production meeting, and a lot of the venues that I do, we don't have the luxury of sitting down and seeing renderings from costume designers. Yeah. And I saw renderings, beautiful renderings from this costume designer, and it's just like I think I was doing cartwheels down the aisle of the theater because it was just so nice to see someone else's art, and it's not a mad dash to be like, okay, this is what it's going to be, and you'll see it when it gets to stage.
What's interesting, and I encourage anybody listening or watching this now or listening later, go to Aaron Meadows' site. It's meadowlight.com, and take a look at some of his slideshows. Your theatrical lighting is incredibly sensitive. Just looking at the stills, that's the first word that popped into my head. There's a subtlety and a sensitivity to the color choices and the palettes. I feel like a lot of theatrical portfolios I look at, it's like I can see the Roscoe 57, I can see the R80 in the background, like I know I can see what happened back there. Your color choices were extremely subtle, things that I couldn't pick up on immediately, a lot of blended stuff. Really sensitive work, and it shined through even in the stills. So really congratulations on that stuff.
Thank you, because I've always felt that choosing color was the hardest thing, and I'd be there for hours going, is this right? This art, oh wait, here's a swatch book right here. Sorry, Hey guys. So it's like, taking your swatch book and going, is this the right color? Is this the right color? And it was almost it almost gave me agita, So it makes me feel good that someone says, "Hey, great color choices." And I sometimes think, at least in the theatrical realm of things, and this also leaves the realm of corporate events, and parties and things. But sometimes when I'm doing a show and people don't notice the lighting, then I actually did my job. Even more so if it's like an environmental thing where
Sure.
you see light coming through the window, and it's not like, oh yeah, he hung up, a bunch of Fresnels back there. But it's like, wow, he really got, the coldness of that crisp day and just the gray, cool light coming through the window. Thank you, because
Yeah.
that's a big compliment. Thank you.
No, listen, I mean, with theater to me versus say like a corporate event, I mean, I don't know. Every client's different. Some clients just want it to disappear. They want the venue to look nice, and they don't really want to think about it. I've had other clients that say to me, I want it to be wow. I want to walk in and like they've got one feature piece or something that they really want you to, say wow about, and so they do want it to pop. Um, Theater is similar, but to your point, you're trying to tell a story or convey a concept, and so if it's not all in service of a larger production, it's not working, right? So it's that's kind of subtlety is to me a valuable asset. Um, do you have this is another one of my favorite questions lately. Do you have a set of gear that you've fallen in love with that you're specking over and over again, or is it job by job?
No, it depends. If it's a theater venue, it's really what they have, and it's not so much. Well, in some ways, it is the gear, but it's the type of gear in terms of the type of units. If it's a show that I really don't have a lot of time to sit down and dissect, you know, I call the units paintbrushes because as we're both designers, we're both painting with light, and when there's little time and I have to be in the space, I pretty much brush with big broad strokes. Um, of course, we know that ETC is out there, so that's a good. And I hope it's okay. It's like I'm not endorsing one or the other, but it's
No,
just
no, yeah, it's fine. It's fine.
it's just what I'm used to. So it's just like I love the consoles that ETC has, um, and really it's a lot of the fixtures are all about what I'm trying to paint with in terms of light. On the South Street
Sure.
Seaport gig, I used a couple of Max 700s, and then I had a chance to play with the quantum washes. And that was great because this is a fixture that I've never used before. And, I was pretty impressed with it. And that's the thing. A lot of the time in theater, we have conventional gear. And with that, it's all about where I really want to put it. Um, when you have moving lights, it also is about where you want to put it. Where's your front angle going to be? Where's your side light going to be? But then it gives you a lot more room to play with in terms of the color. So it gives you a wider range of palette, a wider palette to deal with.
Sure.
In terms of specking gear, though, it really all depends on what the budget is. Because
Right.
I've gone to venues where it's like, hey, here's $300 for your budget. I think you can buy a couple of sheets of gel and maybe some donuts for the volunteers that we have to help you out. Or,
Yeah.
or hey, this is money's no option. Get what you want, to make the product look good. You know,
Yeah, and that's just the nature of the beast, right? Like that's uh, I've talked to. I mean, I once did a show. I was, a crew guy actually back in my college days for a show that Hal Binkley was doing,
oh wow.
and he had in his bag he had a string of gel that he like during our breaks at Tech was stringing together because he was going to a regional theater the next
Mm,
day, and the gel strings they didn't have gel strings at the theater,
mm.
so this was stuff that he had that he was just piecing together in our breaks because this is a guy, multiple Tony Award winner, and the next gig he was going to, he was stringing together gel. So that's top and bottom of the business. There's no
But
shame in that.
that's cool though, because he gets it and he understands that. And the thing I think of as our art form is, there are the gigs out there of, maybe they're not the most highest paying gigs, but it's still like it feeds our soul. So it sounds like he was going to a gig where, he wanted to feed the soul, and he also knew what their limitations were, and
Right.
he was able to work with that. And I met him once, sweetheart of a guy, nice guy. Um,
Um, So talk to me a little bit about now, just on the other end of the spectrum. On your website, one of the most prominent things out there is the work that you've done for NBC Sports, and I see the NHL, NHL and NBC set, and that's a very different world. So talk a
Yeah.
little bit about what your role is in that world, and what kind of just take us through that from top to bottom. How does that work, and what's your role in that production?
Okay. Well, starting out with the roles, I was basically the lighting director for that space.
Sure.
It was designed, and then the lighting director comes in, and the lighting director works hand in hand with a person called a video engineer. Because really, it's, I don't need to be in the studio. I don't need to look at the set sitting in the studio. What I need to do is I need to see it on a monitor, and then I talk to the video engineer. And what the video engineer is concerned with is levels of light and contrast. And pretty much as a lighting director, for me, it's about keeping the light as even as possible, which can sometimes be a big challenge. But in terms of TV, it's all about what the camera sees. And when I see key light to me is when the camera seeing is just directly shooting on and seeing that person. The light is directly in front, and then you use side fills to fill it out. So I work hand in hand with the lighting director. With other places, such as the Bleacher Report that I've worked with, I've been lucky in the fact that I've also had a chance to play designer, so I've had more of a hand in creating the overall look of it. And then still playing the role of lighting director, where once we have the design, we sit the people in the seats, and then I'm running back and forth to see, what the best monitor shot looks like, so I can balance the levels and make sure those people look fine.
Sure, sure. And when you're so, I'm sure this has come up. It came up for me a couple of times, but when you're doing a production where, let's say it's a conference where it's the people in the theater or the auditorium or whatever are seeing this live, but then there's also an audience on camera to think about. It's probably one of the toughest jobs that I come across, because I used to do. I wasn't the designer, but I was the sort of the head tech and the lighting, the direct, to a point, the lighting director. It's hard to say, because I was the venue guy that managed all the lighting and did the focus every day, but I wasn't ultimately responsible for the lighting on Inside the Actors Studio. And to me, it was very hard for me to wrap around my head that what mattered was the camera.
Yeah.
Even there could be 300 people in the audience watching it, but that's really not what we care about on that given day. What we care about is what the cameras are seeing. And do you have you do you do a lot of conference work? And if so, do you think that how do you approach something like that?
Well, not so much conference work. Well, I do conference work, and we do have IMAG. But a lot of the times, if it's just a corporate conference, it's more for their webcasting. So the client won't be so picky about, how it looks too much on camera versus can the people be seen, by the audience on stage.
Sure.
If it's something that's going to be shot for, such as I've done theatrical shows where we've had cameras in the audience, I kind of leave that up, unless I'm instructed otherwise by a higher power. I kind of
Right.
leave that up to the lighting engineer to sort of ride out the levels and make sure he can do the job. He can really shade the cameras. For me, in that situation, I just want to provide him with one source that's 3200 white light. So, when the red light comes on, it doesn't look green.
Right.
But really, it's about, I think, what the client wants. If the client says, this is strictly for video, we have people sitting there, but I want this to look the best for video, then that's where I take it from. So what I will do is, I'll ask them, what do you want? Do you want this lit for live, or do you want it lit for the camera? And then you take it from there. With South Street Seaport, the interesting part of that is I knew it was going to be on camera, but we were lucky enough that every camera had a CCU, camera control unit, with a video engineer shading the cameras. And the way the technology has come so far today with cameras, they can do almost anything and make the picture look beautiful. So I basically lit it, from a theatrical standpoint, and then they came out with their chip chart. They did what's called phasing the cameras. So they basically adjusted every single color for the camera so it all looked natural. And then from there, it's just, for me, it was about creating pretty looks.
Yeah, I hear that. Yeah, it's again, it's so different from show to show that it's hard to say that there are any hard and fast rules. To me, the important thing is to stay flexible on on these event gigs and on gigs where you may have a client that's not necessarily experienced in performance or experienced in these kind of uh, productions. That happens a lot in corporate clients where they don't, they saw something on TV once and they're kind of wondering why they can't have it. That happens sometimes. Um,
I want the third and Close Encounters spaceship to fly down.
right, right,
Oh, we need a crane for that. Why do we? But can't you just make it happen?
right,
It's
right.
Bridget. That's the hardest thing is with a client that hasn't been in the realm or has a little technical background. Even though when I say that, also a little knowledge can be a dangerous thing.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, it's hard to sometimes bridge the gap, which kind of brings me back to theater because there are some directors that, a director will say to me, I don't know about light, but I want this. And what I believe is people know about light, they just don't understand the way of communicating it. Because really, we are in a world where, light has a big effect on us. We've got the traffic light, red light means something, the green means something, and amber means another thing. And it's also how we see things in terms of maybe how the sun is or the art is. If you look at a picture of art. So when I talk with a director, I try to convey that through art. And also, I also try and let them know what the technical uh, drawbacks might be of creating
Sure.
something like that. And then they get a better idea of it. But when you're able to take their concept and then break it down to a level that they can understand, and it's really about, it's kind of lost a big thing of being lost in translation. Taking it down, dissecting it down to building blocks that they can understand, then you can get your concept across.
Yeah, I mean, people that say they don't get light or they don't get the importance of it or whatever, people may say,
They're in the
this is the
dark.
time of year. Right. They say that, but then when you like walk around my neighborhood right now, half of my neighbors become lighting designers because it's
Yep.
the holidays, and what are they doing? They're putting lights out in front of their house. They have an idea, right? They have a
Yep.
thought about how this works. Not all of them are great lighting designers, but my thought is that it elicits a visceral response in
Yep.
people, and even if they can't articulate it, they can. Like, I'm not a musician. I wish I was. I wish I had that talent, but I know that music elicits a response in me, and I can sort of wrap my brain around it. I can't recreate it, but I
Mhm.
know what it feels like, and that's sort of the similar relationship to how a lighting person is on any kind of a set, and it's not the same as being a set designer or a costume designer where you can show a drawing or a rendering and show this is what the costume will look like, this is what the set will look like. You have to experience it, and that it's a lot of trust. It's a lot of trust that whoever the end, whether it's director or the producer or whoever, it's a lot of trust for them to put in you. And it seems like, at least from what I can tell from your portfolio, people are trusting you, and it's working out pretty well.
It's hey, I fooled them so far. No, no, I've been very fortunate, and I've worked with people that are trusting me and saying, hey, we're doing this now. Can you do it? And I'll be like, yeah, well, let's make it happen. Um, Man, there was a point that you just touched upon that I just went out of my head. But no, I've been very lucky that I've been having wonderful people to work with and trust. Because yeah, okay, as we were saying, with costume design, with set design, here are my renderings. Here's the model.
Right.
And so people can really see and get a feel what it looks like. For me, even when I'm lighting, I don't know what it's going to look like until the first light is focused. And once, I get into the groove of the focus. But even after putting the lights down in the plot, and then, once the loading is done, after we, focus that first, it's more like after I get my wash focus,
Yeah.
then then I breathe a sigh of relief. Then I'll be like, okay, good, this is going to work.
Yeah, it's like when I was working on small theatrical productions, when my first gobo wash was focused and I felt like I actually had texture on the set, it was like, okay, thank God. Like I knew like I had like you always plan for your acting areas. You know the actors are going to be lit. They're not going to be in the dark. You know that like that you've got. But like the thing that you really wanted to look nice until that focus was done, I was always holding my breath because I was like,
Yeah.
well, until I get some texture on this set, I'm not going to feel like I did my job. And it's or whatever. Sometimes it's a color wash. Sometimes it's a whatever your statement is. But especially in theater, you may only get one or two of them. You may only get one or two things that are special, and until those look great, you're holding your breath the whole time.
Yep. So
Um,
I hope this concept worked. I think this will work.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, Aaron, tell people where they should find you if they're looking for you, and where they can look at your work, where they can contact you, all that good stuff.
Well, you can find me at www.meadowlight.com. That's MEADOWLIGHT.com. And
Awesome. Anything else? Email addresses, phone, whatever. Anything else you want to? This is your time. Whatever. Anything else you want to throw out there?
you can email me at loftlight at AOL. Yes, can you believe it? AOL. AOL.com. And let me tell you one thing about AOL. When we had Sandy and I lost power, I was still able to get online because I was still using the phone line in my old computer until
Nice.
AOL wanted me to pay for it. What? Are you kidding? Yes, but you can reach me at loftlight, that's LOFTLIGHT, at AOL.com.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for coming on the show. I have my little finishing. And somewhere right now, George is listening, and he hates that I say that I have a closing spiel, but I'm going to say it anyway. Thank
Epilogue.
you. My epilogue here. Uh, Thank you very much for being part of another edition of the Lighting Guy podcast. I am your host, JP Bedell. Thanks very much to Aaron Meadows for coming on the show.
Thank you.
All right. We will catch you the next time. You can find us at avnation.tv. You can find me at James Bedell on Twitter, JamesBedell. Thanks very much, and we will catch you next time.